गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। We have been discussing Mula Vidya Nirasa. The Vedantic statement is only a jnapakam natu karakam. This is what Bhashyakara has been telling repeatedly in many places of the Bhashya. So, jnapakam means it only points out, or in other words, it gives a suggestion. Upanishadic statement only gives a hint, suggestion, a hint, or in other words, it points out. It gives a suggestion or a hint or points out. It doesn't modify something. It doesn't modify one state of a something into another state. The mind which is existing in one state changes into another state, that is a change in a state of the mind. A transformation of a state of mind. A transformation is not awakening. Waking up is different from modifying. Modifying involves a real change. Awakening doesn't change anything. See the difference. Awakening is different from changing. So, Jnanam only awakens, doesn't modify anything. Jnanam only awakens, or it doesn't take you into another experience. Therefore, Brahmatvam is not a new experience. It is a discovery. It is a discovery of an existing experience. Discovery of an existing experience or awakening to the reality. But no, awakening means there was, in your perception, there was an obstruction. Mind was paying attention in a wrong direction. Okay? He was paying attention in a wrong direction, in a wrong side. So only the attention, wrong attention is corrected, brought to the right angle of looking. That's all. Wrong angle of looking is corrected and brought to the right angle of looking. Okay? Either coming to the right angle of looking or a discovery it is. Not a bringing about a new experience. Not creating a new experience. A jnanam doesn't do that. Karma does it. So Purvapakshi told, how can you have Brahmatvam as an already an existing experience? Purvapakshi told, Brahmatvam cannot be there as an existing experience. And he gives an example of Swarga, which we have discussed already. Take an example of Swarga. So you cannot have an experience of Swarga right now being in a human body. Because the human body, human nervous system creates a certain mind. It permits only a certain experiences in the mind. Because the mind which is connected to the body becomes dependent on the body. The mind which is connected to the body becomes dependent on the body. Body means the nervous system, hormones, and blood and all. Then that mind which is connected to body and dependent upon the body, identify with the body, can have only certain level of experience. It cannot have another level of experience which is beyond the body, which body doesn't permit. Okay, therefore, Purvapakshi told human body permits only certain level of experience. For example, he gives the experience of heaven. the experience of heaven, the joy of heaven, you cannot get as long as you are encompassed, entrenched with the body, with the human body, with the Manushya Sharira. So you have to give up the physical body, then only you will come to have the heavenly experience or the Brahmaloka experience. To this, Siddhanti's reply was, it is true that the heavenly experience, I mean Swarga Anubhava and Brahmaloka Anubhava, these experiences cannot be accommodated within the state of mind, the mind which itself is dependent upon the human body, Manushya Loka Sharira, it can't. So, therefore, to be able to go to heaven or experience the heavenly experience, you have to give up the human body. You have to give up the human body, then only you will be able, your mind will be able to go to another loka, then assume the suitable body according to that loka. Assume the suitable body suitable to that loka, then only you will have that experience. That is okay. Those experiences are true. What you say is true, we accept it. Those experiences are exclusive experiences. They don't include one loka experience in the other. They are all excluded. Therefore, you can say that you need to give up the human body to be able to go to Sarga, or to be able to go to Vaikuntha, or to be able to go to Naraka. Because those experiences cannot be held in the mind, which itself is bound by the human body. But here, what we are talking is absolute Brahman. Absolute Brahman. Brahman is an absolute thing. It is not an another state of mind. It is the very root of the mind. It is the root of the entire world. It is the basis of the world. Therefore, it is not an another experience. It is a universal experience. Not this different. Another experience which is an alternative experience to the human Anubhava, Swarga Anubhava and Vaikuntha Anubhava is an alternative to Manushya Anubhava. Therefore, you have to change the Manushya Anubhava, get into another mood of the Swarga Loka, another mood means a state, another state of Vaikuntha or Brahmaloka. Naturally, you need another state because they are all the different levels of mind. Okay, they are all different states of mind. Whereas Brahman is not another state of mind. It is the very root of mind. Okay, you are not getting Brahmatvam as another experience within the mind. Note it. Brahmatvam or Sakshitvam is not another experience within the mind. A little more deeper mind or a expanded mind. Various experiences of other lokas are deeper mind, expanded mind, purified mind. But Brahmatvam is not a state of mind when it is expanded, purified or deepened. Neither question of deepening nor expanding nor all these words I am using. People may do, all they mean same, all of them mean the same thing. Only to just convey it I am using it. Okay, either you say deepening, purifying, expanding and all that, because it is the very basis of the mind, whatever the state of mind. So the truth, the essential truth called Brahman is a universal truth, is all pervasive. So Brahmatvam or Sakshi is present in Manushya Loka, is present in Swarga Loka or Brahma Loka. So the Sakshi Bhava, the Atma Swarupam is the common basis for when the mind is in Narakaloka or in an animal or a plant or an animal or an insect or a Manushya. See, the mind could be in a Narakaloka, the mind could be in a plant life, in the plant body or in the insect body or in the animal body or in the human body or in the Swarga body or in the Vaikuntha body. Okay? The mind could fluctuate between a plant to Brahmaloka. Abrahma Stambha Pariyanta we call them. The mind might fluctuate between plant up to Brahmaloka, but the Sakshi is commonly present as a basis for all these lokas. All these lokas exist within Brahman, within the Atma, within the Sakshi. Therefore, Sakshi doesn't fluctuate. Sakshi, or the original nature of Atma, the real universe, or in other words, in modern language, universal experience of Atma. Okay? Sakshitvam is a universal and self-existing experience. It is a universal and it is not a newly acquirable experience. It is a self-existing experience. Okay? It is a universal and self-existing experience is underlying all your experiences of mind. Therefore, you can't say that this Brahmanubhava is not present in our life. We need another additional experience. Therefore, he suggested you have to depend either on the statement of authority, testimony of the Shastra, you have to depend on Shastra Vakya, or depend upon Jnani's words. Other Jnanis, enlightened Jnanis are there, their words you have to depend, but a common man doesn't have an experience of Brahman. Who says? Purvapaksha. Purvapakshi says common man does not have or cannot have an experience of Brahman. All that he has is only a Jiva Anubhava alone. But the Jiva Anubhava is not, Jiva Anubhava is only a wrong appearance of Brahmatvam. Siddhanti says Brahmatvam is the very consciousness. The consciousness is distorted as a Jiva. Jiva is only a distortion of Brahman. So the distortion also, see, the Jivatvam is a distorted perception of original nature of Atma, that is called Brahman. Here you see one interesting factor is the original nature called Brahman or Sakshi, it remains intact all the time. So when the Brahman is distorted, the distorted perception of Brahman is Jiva. So this Jivatvam is a distorted perception. Where does it exist? This distorted perception in the form of Jivahood, in the form of individuality. Jivahood means the I notion. Jivahood means the notion of I, the notion of individuality, the notion of I, or the notion of Jivahood. Okay, so the notion of Jiva, which is a distorted perception of Brahman, here you note it. This distorted perception is not covering up Brahman, because at the level of Atma, no distortion. Brahmatvam is all the time there, even now. Even now when you think you are a Jiva, your Brahmatvam remains quite intact, unaffected, undisturbed, untouched. Okay? Your nature of Brahmatvam remains unaffected, untouched, undisturbed. That means this distortion is not there at the level of Brahman. Brahman doesn't undergo Jivahood. Brahman doesn't get disturbed. Brahman means the real nature of Atma doesn't get the distortion. Distortion is at the level of distortion alone. Distortion is an imagination. Imagination is at the level of imagination. Note this point, important. Distortion is a wrong imagination, a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding is at the level of misunderstanding. Misunderstanding doesn't occur to the real Atma. Real Atma doesn't have two states. Real Atma, the Chaitanya Atma, doesn't have a state of distortion, doesn't have a state of misunderstanding, and another state of freedom from misunderstanding. See, the state of Ajnana and correcting the Ajnanam, misunderstanding and correction, these two don't exist for Atma. Note this, Atma level they don't have. Neither there is a misunderstanding and correction. Both are only from the standpoint of Adhyasa alone, to the Atma, to the real conscious Atma, Chaitanya Atma, neither there is a distortion nor there is a correction. Atma is ever free, ever untouched by both misunderstanding as well as correction. That is Ajnanam and Jnanam. Atma is Atma level. Level means to the real nature of Atma, neither there is Ajnanam nor there is Jnanam. Okay. So ajnanam jnanam, the misunderstanding and correction of the right understanding, both do not apply. That means Atma never suffers a state of misunderstanding. See, Atma in its real nature never suffers a misunderstanding. It is ever free. This is what some people, non-Advaitins, misunderstand. They say Atma is subjected to Ajnanam. See, Atma is subjected to Ajnanam or a misunderstanding. Then he becomes a Jiva. Brahma becomes a Jiva for a while, and later with the help of the Jnanam gets liberated. You see, that he is subjected to Ajnanam and he gets liberated. Both are Adhyastha, note it. Vedanta says Atma itself doesn't undergo a state of Ajnanam and doesn't get liberated from Ajnanam, because it is ever liberated and its nature of liberation remains ever the same. Atma's very nature, its very nature is liberation. It can never get bound, nor it can get liberated. Getting bound and getting liberated, both are Adhyastha alone. See, getting bound and getting liberated, having a misunderstanding and also correcting the misunderstanding, getting a right knowledge, both are impositions alone. Atma by itself is free from both. It is ever free and its freedom can never change. Its very nature is freedom. If Atma's nature is moksha, Atma's nature is Satchidanandam, he can never lose it. Atma can never lose its Satchidananda Swarupam. Atma can never lose its Brahmatvam and get into a state of samsara and suffer it for a while and later get liberated. If this were the case, then we have to say that Atma falls into a state of ignorance, lives in the ignorance for a while, and then again gets liberated. That means Atma is really undergoing a state of Ajnanam, a state of samsara, and after some time comes out of it. This is only Adhyaropitam, note it. For teaching purpose, it is Adhyaropitam. But Atma Anadhyastena Nahi, in Adhyasa Bhashya there is one statement. See, where is that Adhyasa Bhashya? Adhyastasya gunena doshena va Atma nasambadhyate, in Adhyasa Bhashya. Adhyastasya gunena doshena va Atma nasambadhyate. See how beautiful statement is. Adhyastasya gunena doshena va. Neither there is an Adhyasa nor there is a freeing from Adhyasa. For the standpoint of Atma. For the Atma, these two don't exist. That means Atma by its very nature is ever free. Then what is this being subjected to ignorance? That is from the standpoint of ignorance alone. That it is subjected to ignorance is also from the standpoint of ignorance alone. Tatra evam sati. See, tamevam lakshanam adhyasam pandita avidyeti manyante. This misunderstanding is called avidya by Vedantins. And correcting the misunderstanding, correcting means what? Disproving the misunderstanding. That means the misunderstanding, proving the misunderstanding to be not true to the Atma. So Vedanta proves the understanding we have about the Atma is not true to the Atma. It is wrong. It is not true to the Atma. This is called disproving that understanding. So this disproving understanding is called Jnanam. Okay? Tad vivekena cha vastu swarupa avadharanam vidyam ahuhu. There is a misunderstanding and disproving that misunderstanding. Okay? These two. Tatra evam sati yatra yadadhyasaha tatkrutena doshena gunena va anumatrena api sanasambadhyate. Atma is not at all connected with misunderstanding and its correction. Okay? Neither misunderstanding nor connection. Neither the positive side of Adhyasa nor the good of Adhyasa. Neither the good of Adhyasa nor the bad of Adhyasa. Atma is not at all connected. Means Atma doesn't undergo Adhyasa. Atma Atma doesn't go, Adhya undergo. That means Jivatvam, the individuality, the misunderstanding doesn't cover up Atma. See note the point. The misunderstanding or Jivahood or the sense of individuality never covers up the Atma. There is no veil. Atma's nature, the Brahmatvam, is never veiled. It only slightly distorts from the standpoint of distortion. It never veils Brahmatvam. Therefore, Brahmatvam or the original nature of Atma is ever present. So, even when you see, only thing is you are not turning your attention towards that. All that Vedanta says is you are not turning attention towards it. Yet it is there. Even though you don't pay attention, it has been, you don't miss it. Brahmatvam or Atmatvam cannot be ever missed by anybody. Even while you take yourself to be Jiva, even while you take yourself to be individual, you never miss your Brahmatvam. It is there. You only have to cognize it. You only come to cognize it, but it is there as an experience. Therefore, he says that what Vedanta says is, turns your attention, gives a suggestion to you, so that it only gives a suggestion. What you already had, oh, yes, it is there. So, after pointing out, he looks at it, oh, yes, I knew already. It is there right from beginning. That means, what is already there, but your partial attention. Your attention is partial. You see it, but you miss it as it were. Okay? Therefore, it only gives a suggestion. Even to that suggestion, even to understand the suggestion, the background of Atma is always present. The background of Atma, the Atma forming a background to even to the Jivatvam, even to the misunderstanding in the form of Jivatvam, Atma's nature, the consciousness is there all the time. So even when you are in waking state, the pure consciousness is always there. Even in dreams, even in deep sleep, in all the three states. How do you know that the states are coming and going? Do you see that? State is not, first thing is, how can you call it as a state? See, this is very interesting. How do you call waking as a state? Why don't you say waking is only a truth? You say waking is only a state. Why? Because waking begins and ends. That means you can set aside the waking. You can set aside the dream. How do you know? Waking replaces dream. Dream replaces waking. But who is the bottom? Who is behind these two? Who can say that? With what reference? What reference point you can say the waking ends? Waking, the ending of waking, or replacing of waking by dream. Dream is replaced by waking, or waking cancels dream, dream cancels waking. One rejects the other. One negates the other. How? This negation of two, mutual negation of waking and dream, on what basis you can say? If you didn't have that basis, that is Sakshi. That is universal Atma. That is, this Atma, universal Atma, is self-evident. If we did not have that self-evident Atma, that self-existing and self-evident Atma were not there, you would not have known the waking cancelling dream, dream cancelling waking, you would not know. The waking negating means end of the waking and end of the dream. You would not have known the end of the waking, end of the dream, because you would continue. You would continue in the state alone. You would not have understood unless you have a common background to these two. A common which doesn't come and go. Though waking negates dream, dream negates waking, there is nothing to negate that. That Sakshi forms the basis. Even that you are going into sleep, even that Sakshi is there. That going into sleep, again coming out of the sleep, if you take sleep as a state, you feel as if you are going into it and coming out of it. So even to that, you need that the self-existing Atma. Therefore, Atma is self-evident. And you can't say Brahmatvam or the self-evident non-dual consciousness. Non-dual consciousness, self-evident Atma is not in our experience. Therefore, you can't what you say that? You can't have any reference. You don't have any reference of a Brahman as a basis to verify, to investigate the states. To verify, to investigate the waking, dream and deep sleep states, you need one reference point. Being at that reference point, you can watch the states. To be able to watch the states, you need a universal experience, okay? A universal, undeniable experience. Universal, undeniable, undeniable, or what do you say that? What cannot be missed? What cannot be lost? Invariable experience. That invariable experience is there. So that is the basis. With the help of that as a reference, you watch the states. Okay, waking, dream and other states. You keep watching the states because there is underlying that. And you can't say that, oh, Advaitam Brahma, pure Chaitanyam is not at all in our experience. It is a new experience you are yet to gain, like the experience of Brahmaloka or experience of heaven. Okay? Purvapaksha tried to say that. So Siddhanti answered, no. Vedanta is only Jnapakam. It only gives a suggestion. Okay. To give the suggestion, it has to use the present experience. It has to use a smaller experience and point out a vaster experience. Okay? For example, I tell you, a liter, I always give you the same example. You say a 1 liter pot. 1 liter pot can measure only up to 1 liter. Okay? A 1 liter vessel can measure water or any liquid only if it is 1 liter or if it is less than 1 liter. It can measure. Supposing if it is more than 1 liter, oh, it can't measure. People say that, no, it can't measure. I tell you, it measures. How? Because it can tell that it is something more than 1 liter. That it can give you one measure only, not more measures. If it is more than 1 liter, the same liter pot can tell you it is more than 1 liter. Can it tell or not? We think that a liter vessel can measure only any liquid only up to 1 liter. It can't measure beyond. But it can measure. Measure means it can point out there is something more than 1 liter. You will be so sure you have measured it. Yes, I am so sure it is more than 1 liter. How? Do you have a measuring vessel which is larger than 1 liter? No, I don't have. If you don't have a vessel larger than 1 liter, how can you say? You can say. Because the very liter pot can tell you that it is more than 1 liter. Because liter, it is not accommodating the liquid in the pot. The pot is getting drowned in the liquid. 2 ways. When the pot is taking the liquid inside it, it is accommodating. That means it is taking the liter inside it. It can measure. But sometimes the liter pot, you put the liter pot in water. Instead of taking the water inside it, it goes into the water. Okay? Instead of taking the water into it, it goes inside the water. It gets drowned in it. By getting drowned, then you may think that, ayo, the very measuring pot is getting drowned. How can I measure? The very getting drowned itself is a measure. Getting drowned itself is a measure. It shows it is more than 1 liter. Similarly, our experiences. So, these 2 ways of, one is anything within the 1 liter, the pot can say, but it can also point out what is beyond 1 liter. So, Vedanta uses the other aspect. Therefore, the waking state, by watching the waking state, you come to understand there is something which is beyond waking state. Okay? there is something which is beyond waking state, because where the very waking state gets drowned, where the waking state getting drowned, where the dream state gets drowned, you know that point where it gets drowned. You are aware of it. That awareness is beyond waking, because it swallows the waking, it swallows the dream, it negates swallows, both mean the same thing. There are different ways of telling. It negates the waking, negates the dream, or swallows the waking and swallows the dream. It stands itself unnegated. Therefore, that anubhava is there all the time. Nobody can miss it. Therefore, that anubhava which is there underlying, it is a universal experience. If that were not there, nobody would know. Nobody would know Brahmatvam. Nobody can teach Vedanta. Nobody can teach Vedanta. No student can understand Atma if that anubhava was not there. It is self-existing. It is a self-proof. Okay, it is a self-evident. And taking that as an anubhava, and taking other limited experiences of waking and dream, they are waking and dream. What are the waking and dream? They are partial experiences of that universal experience called Brahman. That universal experience is Brahman. Waking and dream are partial experiences of that universal Brahman. Okay, so the fluctuation of partial experiences, what you call them? Fluctuation. Are changing. Fluctuation or changing. Agamapayitvam, we call in Sanskrit. In English, how can you say? What can you say? Agamapayitvam, coming and going, arrival and departure, or appearance and disappearance. Okay, appearing and disappearing. Appearance and disappearance requires something more than the waking. Okay, on that basis alone you can see the appearance and disappearance of waking. Okay, rising and falling of waking. Rise and fall of waking can be seen against the background of universal experience. That the background which forms the background of all these appearances and rising and falling, rises and falling of other states can be seen against the background. So that background is a universal experience, nobody can miss it. And he says, keeping that as a basis, Vedanta teaching works. Therefore, when Shankaracharya says, Shrutyadayo anubhavadayascha pramanam, so that universal experience is there. So two things are, one is the very universal experience, another is the partial experiences of waking and dream. Okay, partial experiences of waking and dream. Waking and dream are partial of the same Brahman. They are, see, waking is not totally another new experience. Waking is only one partial experience of universal Brahman. Dream is also one partial experience of universal Brahman. Universal Atma. So the universal experience, when seen part by part, is called waking and dream. One partial experiences, therefore these partial experiences, by negating, by changing, by modifying, they point out to something which is beyond the waking and dream. Just as 1 liter pot, by getting drowned in water, it shows this liquid, this water is something more than I can measure. The very liter pot says there is something more than I can measure. The very waking says that there is something more than me, because I disappear. I merge. You know that I disappear. You know that I don't exist. So that very experience of ending of the waking shows that there is something beyond waking. Okay, so that experience you have it. So therefore Shruti only points out, gives a hint towards that Atma, which is a universal experience. Universal experience is twofold. One is a partial experience, another is absolute experience. Therefore, for that absolute experience, you don't need another state of like Swarga or Vaikuntha, Swarga or Brahmaloka. It is their universal experience of all people every time, all people and all the time. Therefore, Shruti only points out. Vachanam Gnapakam Natu Karakam. Shankaracharya says this statement number of places in Prasthanatrayi Bhashya. And Swamiji watched them, spotted them, and he says, if you read only Bhashya, you can never miss these important points, which Shankara emphasizes. What is most important for a student and for the teaching, Shankara never fails to emphasize them. He brings to your attention what is essential point, what is most necessary. He repeats, he asserts them, he repeats them, and he brings it to your attention so that you never miss it. That is the Shankara's method of writing, his method of teaching. What is important, he never misses. He reminds you again and again, so that you understand, because for missing this alone you are unable to understand, for missing this important point. What is what is important, which gives you a turning, which gives you a new turning, which helps you to understand that important point. You have missed it, therefore you are unable to understand. Shankara understands it. This is the point, you are missing it, therefore you are unable to understand. He reminds you at the right time, the right point at the right time. See, this is the point you remember. Oh, once you remember, immediately you get it. You get a, what you call a flash, because that's where he touches it exactly, where it is required, there he touches the point. Therefore, Gnapakam Natu Karakam, don't forget that. Don't forget that, he says again and again. Once it remembers, once he reminds it, then you come to the senses. Oh yes, I am supposed to look at this way, not look for a new experience, but only pay attention. Pay attention to a larger area. Pay attention to the largeness. The smallness gets merged in my larger experience. The smaller experiences get swallowed in the larger experience. That larger experience further gets swallowed into a still larger. Ultimately, all swallowable experiences get swallowed, and that remains self-existing Atma, is neither arriving, neither rising nor falling. It is free from rising and falling. It remains itself unnegated. That's how you reach the absolute unnegatable Atma. Okay. So we proceed. Nyaya iti nyayam avashtabhya vachanam anubhava viruddhamapi artham pratyayayitum nalamiti pratipaditam. Therefore we told vachanam gnapakam. The Shruti statement or anybody's statement, Guru's statement or even a debater's statement is supposed to point out. What can you point out? You can point out an existing experience. Okay? If it is already an existing experience, you can hint. You can turn your attention, draw your attention towards that. Therefore, Gnapakam. Gnapakam means what? It is already there in your experience. You are not paying attention. I am only suggesting you. Therefore, Gnapakam means Shruti only teaches this. It doesn't give you a new experience which you didn't have so far. Now you are going to get anyway. It doesn't teach that way. If it does it, then that becomes a Karakam, not a Gnapakam. Shruti only reveals. Reveals means it helps you to discover. Avashtambya vachanam anubhav. Therefore, it can't teach something which is already not there in your experience. Anubhava viruddham. It cannot afford to teach. Means it has to point out what is already there in your anubhava. Okay, not pointing out the anubhava. It cannot go about. Any Vedantic statement, that means any Vedantic statement or Upanishadic statements or Guru statements or a debater's statement. It cannot circumvent pointing out. And it can't go about teaching, go about debating instead of pointing out. If you can't point out, and still you argue. It's all waste. You argue, you keep on arguing, but your purpose of argument should be to point out what is already there in my experience. You are supposed to point out. If without pointing out you keep on arguing, that means anubhava viruddham. Anubhava viruddham means pointing out anubhava. Pointing out anubhava is teaching according to anubhava. Teaching according to anubhava means pointing out anubhava. Anubhava viruddham means not pointing out anubhava. Asking us to accept it without pointing out, asking us to accept on the strength of his statement. On the strength of his statement, because why don't you show me? Why don't you point out what is in everybody's experience? A universal, it is in you, me and everybody's. What is universal experience? You are supposed to point out. Without pointing out, you argue. That means anubhava viruddham. Anubhava viruddham means what? You are not pointing out. You only expect me to accept on the strength of your words. Okay? The Sanskrit word, Swamiji used anubhava viruddham. Anubhava viruddham means opposite to anubhava. All that is okay. That's a literal meaning. But in Vedantic context, this is how we have to understand it. Anubhava viruddham, anubhava anugunam. Anubhava anugunam means pointing out anubhava. Anubhava viruddham means not pointing out anubhava, but still arguing, making a statement, arguing. How am I to understand that statement? Is your statement pointing out? Pointing out something? No, it's not pointing out. It is not there in anubhava. Yet I am telling you. If supposing he says, it is not there in anubhava, I am not pointing out, I am only telling something. What is that you are telling? What is that you are pointing out? What you are pointing out is not in my anubhava, and still I am supposed to accept it as an idea. It is anubhava viruddham. Anubhava viruddham means an idea imposed, not pointed out. You point out, that is, you are pointing out a fact. But you are not pointing out the fact, you are giving an idea. Idea is not anubhava. Idea is not self-existing. Self-existing Atma is not a universal experience. It is not self-evident, self-existing Atma, but it is you're only giving an idea and ask me to accept it. I cannot, you cannot expect me to accept it. And if I accept, what will I get today? I get only an idea. Idea means I'll get only your opinion. But if you have an opinion, there are many people having many opinions. Even I can have a number of opinions. But none of the opinions mean the universal fact. Okay? Therefore, anubhava viruddham. If a person, a debater, therefore, debaters and Vedanta are like gurus only, mutual gurus. Debater, that's why in Vedanta we say a healthy debate, a good debate. Anybody can't come like that and challenge and I'll debate with you. And anybody can't do, he should be like a guru. Guru means he is also probing, inquiring. A debater should be mature enough to be able to point out the truth. Otherwise, what is the point in arguing like that? Anybody who just doesn't know what is Vedanta, neither he has studied, nor he has contemplated, nor he has done some manana, and he just challenges you, I want to debate. What do you debate? On what basis? You debate, I think the next point will come. You debate on the strength of one statement, somebody's statement, or some guru statement, some guru, some acharya, some philosopher existing in the world. He has got a big following, he has got a centuries old acharya, he has written number of books and there are thousands of followers. He has got a big Peetham. Peetham means he has got a big ashram and followers and all that. That's okay. Might be good and great. We don't dispute that. We don't argue. That's not the point. But the thing is, what about the truth? The truth lives on the strength of truth alone. Truth, that means truth needs to be pointed out, not needs to be explained without pointing out. Without pointing out, keep on talking. Truth doesn't live on the talking. Truth only lives on the very truth which is pointed out. The strength of the truth is the very truth which is pointed out. So your statement has a role only to point out. Your statement, whether Upanishadic statements or Guru's statement or any debater's statement, The statement only has a role, only has a strength. The strength of the statement is that it is pointing out to a fact. Okay? The strength of the statement is that it is pointing out an experience in you, in me, in everybody's. If it is pointing out a universal experience, that statement gets a validity. The statement gets a strength. The statement is capable of revealing because it is pointing out the truth. If it doesn't point out, I ask you, what do you mean that? I am unable to understand. How can be that? Then you say that, no, you won't understand it. You have to take it from me. Some people argue, say, I tell you, take it from me. Take it from me, I tell you. You take it from me. Oh, I know it well. I know it well. I have studied well. Now you keep on addressing other things. Oh, I know it well. I have studied well. I studied from great gurus. I have studied from 100 gurus. I studied from big gurus. All this may be true, but they don't mean anything. That may be true, but it doesn't make any sense. Okay? See how boldly and how correctly Swamiji talks. First time I read the first book of Swamiji, I read was Mula Vidya Nirasa. Because I didn't know his Kannada. I couldn't read his Kannada books. So this is the first book. It has changed me, everything. Great books. So, avachanam anubhava viruddhamapi artham pratyayayitum nalam. A statement which doesn't refer, which doesn't point out your anubhava, existing universal experience itself is not valid. It is not capable of giving any knowledge. It gives only an idea, opinion. A statement which gives an opinion, all the opinions are blind. You have one opinion, somebody has, one guru gives one opinion, another guru, another. Different gurus give us different ideas. All of them are ideas. You don't know which one of them is right. Gurus may be great. They may be true also, but you would not know unless that statement points out what is in my experience, what is in everybody's experience. See how important it is. Vachanam Gnapakam Natukarakam. This book has to be, I tell you, discussed every day. We are giving a gap because many disturbances come. Some festivals come. So we had Ram Navami, we had something else. But anyway, hereafter we hope to have regularly, weekly 2 days. Okay? One is Wednesday and Friday. Earlier, like before, we were doing from Tuesday to Friday. Tuesday, because other days I got engaged other classes. So Tuesday to Friday, two classes, Wednesday and Friday. But weekly 2 is too little. The book is big and we have to move. I don't know what to do. Because we have got other things to do. And if the students were in front, we could have had every day. But the students are away. I don't know where you are, in which part of the world. So you can only address this way. If students were in right in mind, we could have every day. Because you cannot escape. Escape means that will be interesting. The student is right in front of you, you will have everyday class. So the text moves and vichara also goes on. See the vichara here, how Swamiji does. So we have to do leisurely, no hurry. In fact, in Vedanta, you should not hurry. Hurrying itself is a handicap of the mind. When Swamiji would say, you need infinite leisure. Mind has to be totally relaxed. No hurry. It requires an infinite patience just to pay attention. When Upanishad points out, just to pay attention. Patiently pay attention. And what is there, it only pointing out. You require a leisure. Leisure means mind, relaxed mind. No hurry. The hurry, if you make haste, the hastening itself becomes a handicap of the mind. Because mind interferes. A relaxed mind doesn't interfere. Mind is ready to dissolve itself. If the mind is creating problem, creating thoughts and do something, arguing and etc., then mind interferes. Mind has to be relaxed and watchful. As the Shruti, as the Vedantic statement points out, it should be willing to look at where it points out. It should not be stubborn. The mind should be neither stubborn nor rigid nor prejudiced. Okay, mind should be neither stubborn nor rigid nor prejudiced. It should be very flexible, ready to listen what is pointed out. Whatever is pointed out, just to pay attention to it, so the mind doesn't interfere. In Vedanta, main thing is mind should not interfere. Mind should be there, very helping mind. Helping means what? Just like a mirror. See, mirror, in order to show your face, how does the mirror work? Mirror doesn't exist is a beautiful thing. You take it in contrast with a mirror is transparent, okay, clean, but opaque object cannot reflect your face. Compared to a book or any surface, any other surface of any other surface, see the mirror, any other surface cannot reflect your face because it interferes. It doesn't allow your face to appear here. Mirror remains, disappears itself. When you look at the mirror, it disappears because it allows you to see yourself. See, it's a very beautiful example. Mirror allows you to see yourself. As you're looking at the mirror, you don't see the mirror. Watch. You look at the mirror, you don't see the mirror, you'll see yourself alone. But where is mirror? Mirror has become gone background. That means mirror has become neutral, selfless. Mirror has become selfless because so that you can see yourself. If the mirror doesn't allow you to see your face, it shows some color, some form, then you fail to see your face. You cannot see your face. So any other object, like the book you see, this book doesn't allow you to see your face because it is interfering. It is interfering. Mirror doesn't interfere. Doesn't interfere means it facilitates your seeing yourself. Similarly, mind has to be very relaxed, no prejudice. So not arguing, not stubborn, not arguing, and doesn't have any prejudices, doesn't carry anything. It remains like a mirror. And as the sentence comes, you see it. Therefore, Vedanta only points out. It does it if it has already an opinion. That means if the surface, where you are looking at, if it has already has got some color, some form, you won't be able to see your face. If it doesn't have any form, any color, you see mirror, the surface of the mirror has no form, no color. No form, no color. You will see, it reflects you. It reflects you because it doesn't exist. In our Vedantic language, it doesn't exist. This is called Amani Bhavaha. Mind doesn't exist. Manaso Amani Bhavaha. Vedanta says, Gaudapada Acharya. Mind becomes no mind. Mind becomes no mind. This is Vedantic peculiar language. Mind becomes no mind. Mirror is not a thing. If it were something of its own form, its own color, its own shape, if it has got something, it won't allow you to see. That means your face it won't reflect. If it is nothing, neutral, then you can see your face in it. Similar, like a space. Space doesn't have its own form. Anybody can pass through the space because it doesn't have a form. If it has a form like a wall, it doesn't allow you. If there is a wall, it doesn't allow you to pass through the wall. But space is a neutral. It allows you to pass. Similarly, it's in a good medium. So it is a medium, doesn't interfere. So the mind is relaxed, pure, antarmukha. Then in such a mind, the Vedantic statement works excellently. Okay, so vachanam na nyayam avashtabhya, vachanam anubhava viruddhamapi artham pratyayayitum nalam. Ultimately, what we meant to say is, any statement, either Upanishadic statement or some guru statement, some acharya, some great acharya statement or a debater's statement. Anybody's statement cannot teach what is against experience, means cannot teach without pointing out your anubhava. If you don't point out, it doesn't make any sense to me. Your purpose is only to point out. Only to point out. Because what can you point out? What is already existing in me? Okay, that means You are drawing my attention, turning my attention towards it. That's all it can do. Therefore, Anubhavanusara we repeatedly told, according to Anubhava. If you leave out Anubhava, then you indulge in all conceptions, imaginations, ideas, endless ideas. Arguing, one fellow, disputes. Disputes go on endlessly because all are based upon ideas alone. All ideas, opinions, each one likes some idea, he doesn't like certain idea, and what he likes today, he keeps changing tomorrow. Ideas keep changing, and you don't know how far it is true or not. It may look true for a while and again it changes. Therefore, a universal experience, universally unnegatable, undeniable, universal experience, okay? Neither you miss it, nor you can deny it, okay? Neither you can miss it, nor you can deny it. Vadecha tasmad anubhava aviruddha eva yuktayopanyas. Therefore, you have to use the argument. You have to bring a statement. You have to use the statements, you have to bring the arguments which don't go against Anubhava, which rather point out the Anubhava, clarify the Anubhava. Point out the Anubhava, clarify the Anubhava. Only those things have to be used. Okay, 3 points we have discussed. Another 4th point is there in the same 11th passage. 11th khanda we call. In the 11th khanda, 4th point is there. I think 1 hour is over, I'm tired, so we'll discuss next class. This 4th point is also important point. This is in the 12th page, 4th point. Yadatu tarkodbalanaya. That sentence onward, I wanted to discuss today, but again, the review of the past took away my 1 hour. These reviews are taking away my lot of time. Those I have understood already well. These things are may look unnecessary for you, but I have to speak to all students, all kinds of students. Those who are sharp, who get it, who catch it instantly, and some people need repetition, little more clarification. So I have to address all the people. Keeping certain other people in view, I have been repeating certain things so that it gives a clarity. And we will proceed the next thing. Yadat tarko udbalanaya vakyamapanyasyate. How we should not do it and what is the right way of discussing. Okay, the right way of discussing and the wrong way of discussing, that he points out. Okay, we'll see in the next class. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat.